Welcome to the Wisdom of Show. I'm your host, Simon Bowen, and every week I'm speaking to the world's greatest leaders, thinkers, and entrepreneurs about complex issues and impactful leadership. Join us in the Renaissance of Wisdom. Well, welcome to this episode of The Wisdom of, and my guest today is Todd White. And Todd really sits in that sweet spot that I'm always talking about, where, you know, the entrepreneurial spirit, the foundation of successful business should be a powerful force for good on the planet. It should not only be commercially sustainable, but actually be able to serve a cause, a mission, something worthwhile. And after a 35-year career leading for-profit enterprises across a whole range of roles and experiences, Todd entered the not-for-profit world as the CEO of Rescue Mission Alliance, and stepped into the world of actually living the idea of let's do some good in the organizations that we work in. And so, welcome, Todd. I'm thrilled to have you here on the podcast with us.
Thanks, Simon. Really thrilled to be here, and I'm sure we're going to learn some stuff together.
Sure. Conversation always leads to learning, right? And
Correct.
we live increasingly in a tips, tricks, hacks, shortcut world, AI driven, and underneath all of that, the human condition is generally pretty much the same. And some people need help. Some people are more wired to be able to do bigger things than others. Everyone desires to make a contribution. The fundamental human emotions seem to be the same. The world changes around us. And so I'm sort of interested in what prompted the shift for you in the first instance, just as let's just get your background story in for-profit activity for 35 years, and then the shift into Rescue Mission Alliance and the not-for-profit world. I'd love to kind of just get the backstory a little bit.
Sure. Well, I started in the CPA world for about 3 years and really did not like that. Uh, but I learned a lot. I learned how to live inside the box, if you will, in the financial world. Then one of my clients hired me on, 24, 25 years old, and went to work for a new industry, the professional employer organization industry, where I was basically running the company from a financial standpoint. And in 8 years, we grew from 3 million to 40 million. So talk about drinking from a fire hose and learning on the dime there. But it was a great experience. From there, sort of from that business, I started my own company with a partner called AdCheck. And this is before direct deposit was a thing. So my entrepreneurial spirit started to come out in my late 20s and my early 30s. Had an incredible run with AdCheck. And from there went on to be the CFO. I went into the faith-based world for also about 8 or 9 years, where I was the CFO at Gospel Light Publications, a publishing organization that did Vacation Bible School, Sunday school curriculum, also was a publisher for Regal Books. And then from there went on to be the CFO and ultimately the president of Barna Group, so an internationally known research organization and content organization, again, in the faith world. And I was on the board of directors at Rescue Mission Alliance. The previous CEO decided that he was going to take another role, nominated me to the board, and 3 weeks later, I was the CEO at Rescue Mission Alliance.
So let's explore some pathways through what you just said there. 3 million to 40 million only happens with an entrepreneurial sort of mindset and spirit. In what was the time frame again?
About 8 years.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? How do you think about you're a self-professed entrepreneurially spirited person, and the story indicates that. How do you kind of define or think about this word we all throw around, entrepreneurialism, right? Because I think it is a secret sauce necessary for organizational success, whether it's in a faith-based world, a for-profit world, or not-for-profit world. You need this flair. How do you define it?
I don't know where it came from, but I love to solve complex problems. And I think that's what true entrepreneurialism is. It's a constant set of complex problems that you're facing, be it personnel issues, growth issues, cost issues, budget issues. You're constantly having to uh, find the solution to something that ultimately works not just in one scenario, but in multiple scenarios across
Mm,
multiple departments,
mm.
across multiple divisions in various settings. So I think that is a big part of an entrepreneurial person's role and drive is that enjoyment of facing complexity. There's a saying that you have to go through complexity to get to simplicity.
Yeah.
And I believe very much that is the case. And you probably never reach simplicity, but it's a good goal.
Well, it's interesting. If I unpack your response to that, you actually have to enjoy it. You actually have to want to do that. And then you made a statement which is easy to miss. But the real solution to a complex problem is transportable. The solution can move to other applications where that same complex problem exists, maybe with a slightly different context. So say from a finance application to a HR application, for example. I think that's an interesting sort of observation. Are there any other ways that you would frame or think about what we would call a complex problem?
Yeah. So what's interesting, what I found over 35 years is the way to start any solution process is to start with business basics. And those really can only come with experience and failure, lots and lots and lots of failure as you learn what to do and what not to do. And again, that's constantly changing. You're in a creative, fast changing environment. So being able to go back to the basics and understand business 101 concepts. I
Yeah,
have, a personal set of business philosophy that I use, which is being a good steward of what you have. That's money, time, resources,
yep,
people.
yep.
So starting there, I believe that if you do that, it's a great step forward in that process of beginning to solve that complex problem.
Yeah, I've been talking about stewardship now for nearly 15 years, and that simple sense of it's not ownership, it's caretaking. And every resource we have, uh, is either consumed or converted.
Mm.
And
Mm.
the job of great stewards is to convert it to another level of value, as opposed to let's just consume this thing and see the value disappear. Ultimately, it's simple to talk about, hard to do. This whole idea of stewardship.
The greatest example and my go-to is the parable of the talents. So I'm
Yeah,
not sure
yeah,
if you're familiar with that, but if you are familiar, you know that the two people who were ultimately praised and blessed uh, were given the same amount, and they went out, took risk, they made investment, they were strategic, and they grew their resources while being good stewards of what they were given.
mm,
The person who buried their talents, ultimately, it was a pretty harsh rendering of what that person had to deal with. So I believe it is not only to be a good human, but in our case, to really follow biblical principles of good stewardship. And again, I think here at RMA, we have people's lives in our hands. So
yeah,
it translates from not only, the financial components of running a complex business, small but complex, but literally being good stewards of the residents who have come to us for care and help and safety and turning their lives around.
yeah. It's interesting. I was having a conversation with a client yesterday, and we were talking about leadership and business. And I think this is actually true for everybody, really. But the moment you step into a leadership role, your life has become a promise to other people. the moment you step into a leadership role, you're employing people. Your life is a promise to the people you employ because they're pretty dependent upon you, for their future. If you have customers, your life has become a promise to those customers because you're meant to be the value maker, the person that converts resources to another level of valuable resource. And that's a pretty big responsibility if you think about it in those terms. I used to do a lot of work in the mining industry, and it's not uncommon for mines to put everybody on furlough. When the price of the ore drops, let's just shut the mine down for a period of time. But if you do the math, you've got a couple of thousand people working at a mine. The community that hangs off the decision of the mine manager is about 15,000 people.
Mm.
But that's so your life is a promise. Your decisions are a promise to 15,000 people. Take the stewardship of that promise really seriously. To me, stewardship is being a great steward of the promise your existence is meant to make to the people that you affect. It's a big topic we could spend the whole time talking
For
about.
sure.
But how do you mix? So you spent many years in the for-profit world, and the for-profit world is profit, right? And great organizations try to bring other great contribution to it, but it's for profit. In the not-for-profit world, it would be much better if we called it for purpose, meaning the primary measure is purpose, not profit, as opposed to the primary measure on the Fortune 500 or the ASX 200 is profitability and revenue and share value. You've obviously brought a value-based approach to leadership in both those roles. Have there been any distinctions between the two that you've had to think through, or has it just been a case of as long as you've always led with your values, it's tended to work out? I'm interested in the comparisons for you.
No, I don't think so. I think that's an important part of it. You've heard it said there's no such thing as a nonprofit. We just don't pay taxes.
Yeah.
So it's very, very important that we understand our margins. We have thrift stores that generate about half of our revenue. So we have to understand how it is that we run a retail business
Yeah.
and employee costs and profitability and all overhead. Understanding that it is imperative that we operate in essence at profit because again, that is being good stewards. We want to show our donors that we are being good stewards by running healthy social enterprise businesses that are helping their donor dollars go 2, 3 times further than if it were just fully relying on a donor. But again, same thing with the donors side. We want to make sure that every dollar that they're giving is going, 85, 90%, 95% to the ministry that we're running that ultimately changes lives dramatically for the better. So it
Yeah.
is definitely a both and.
Yeah. And I guess maybe at a values level, we don't change that much. And so, if you're a values driven leader, you'll lead with those values, whatever organization you're in.
I'd like to think so.
And if you don't, you'll probably lead in that way, whatever organization you're in, right? And the output will be the output, if you like. So, you spoke about start with the business basics, and then as you started to walk through that example, you also went straight to business basics. And so I'd love to build a model with you. You've moved through different organizations in senior roles, CFO or CEO. You have a business and accounting background or CPA background, so you understand the mechanics and the dynamics and the economics of business really, really well, but also the people, the human side of it, obviously. When you come into an organization as the CEO and, quote unquote, got the first 100 days. What's your mental framework for fast assessment of what you want to look at, what you want to discover, what you want to unpack and learn more about? Just if you just want to start talking through that, I will start to build a model out of it and see if we can leave folks with the 100-day fast framework for a new CEO. So what do you start? What do you look at?
Yeah, it's a great question. So again, I'm a pretty simple guy. I like to boil things down. I sort of feel there are three levers that an organization can work on and pull. One is revenue.
Yeah.
The other one are cost controls. And the third, I think often overlooked, but probably the most important is efficiency, output, if you will.
Yeah.
So I think I spent my first 100 days visiting all of our sites, about 16 different sites that I went to, meeting as many of our staff that I could, getting to know our executive team as quickly as possible. But really, what I did was I went around and I looked for every rock I could find, and I turned it over, and lo and behold, I found a lot of gold. Uh, so, um, opportunity rich environment, which is really, I saw a little bit. I was on the board of directors before joining. I knew there was that opportunity. Rescue Mission Alliance is a uh, sort of a holding company, if you will, an M&A company in the nonprofit world. We have a very large vision to turn Army into a nationally known brand, where we're actually helping other nonprofits by taking over all their administrative costs. So in order to do that, we have to make sure you sort of have to go through a pruning process to make sure that the root is really, really strong.
Right.
So that's sort of, I started with the root, if you will.
That's interesting. I mean, I'm taking liberty and just filling some stuff in here. So as you talk this through, what immediately pops to my mind is a two by two matrix, two dimensions of revenue. Money between revenue and cost. That's pretty well understood. But then the third thing you focused on was efficiency, and the question becomes, what is the other end of efficiency?
Yeah.
Right. And then you drop the word opportunity in there, and they don't often go together, but actually they make sense as a continuum because we quite often sacrifice efficiency in the pursuit of opportunity. And if you put efficiency and great cost control together, what you actually create is a really strong root foundation for the organization. If you kind of lift the rocks and find gold underneath, you're probably actually discovering some revenue opportunity, some upside on the money continuum and the opportunity to grow that. What if you look at revenue and efficiency? What is the output of that? I mean, obviously we can build this really strong root foundation by controlling costs without losing efficiency. But what's the benefit if we can drive more revenue without losing efficiency in the pursuit of that? What does that do?
Well, first of all, I love this because I've never actually drawn that out myself. So I appreciate this visual tremendously. And I'm thinking through the revenue and efficiency. And so the company I started, AdCheck, was a marketing agency in
Mm,
essence. I love marketing, sort of my second love.
mm.
So I'm sort of wondering if there's a branding slash marketing component
Oh, yeah.
where you're creating efficiency in your market by uh, growing your brand awareness, and you
Right.
do that through an effective marketing program or plan.
Yeah.
Uh, I don't know if I'm right,
Well,
but
I wonder if I expand that to a bigger level. I like you, am a marketing advocate. If spending capital on the back
that's
end
it.
of the business delivery is overcapitalization if you haven't invested on the front end, which is reach. And marketing should be one of the most efficient things you do.
You can measure it. It's yeah, exactly. You're looking for ROI. I love reach. Love
Yeah.
that.
So, if we think about anyone that's watching this, you know, it's easy to slip into thinking that marketing is all about creativity, but marketing is about a machinery
Correct.
that
Yes.
gives you reach to revenue, if you like. And so then on the other side, controlling costs sometimes causes some people to think we're killing opportunity. That's probably not the case. What is the inflection between cost and opportunity? So we control cost, and obviously we're not going below the point of inability to exist, but we're controlling cost. What sort of, if finding more revenue at an opportunity side creates gold, what does controlling cost at the opportunity side create?
Well, the word, I mean, this is not rocket science. It's opportunity cost, right? You have to measure.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
have to, we have so many opportunities here. We have to constantly be prioritizing where it is we're going to invest. So there's way more opportunity than we have resources.
there's the word, Todd.
So prioritize, yes.
Yeah,
So
there's
measuring, estimating the opportunity cost of two or three situations, and we can only have enough to invest in one of those.
Yeah, perfect. And so, if I was a CEO in a new company and I'm talking to staff and I'm talking about the first 100 days, they don't know me. They don't know what to expect. They don't know if I'm going to come and slash and burn. Have we bought this company to destroy it and extract everything out of it? Or have we come to the company to build it? I might stand in front of these new people and say, as a CEO, I have a pretty simple framework for what I'm going to be looking at in the next 100 days. I am going to spend the next 100 days, turning over a lot of rocks inside the business. Some of those rocks haven't been turned over for years.
Correct.
And a lot of people think when a new CEO comes in, they're turning over the rocks to find the problems.
Mm-hmm.
And
True.
I'm actually turning over the rocks to find the value that already exists. And I have a pretty simple framework. I'm a business person, so I think about this in terms of the financial framework, which is revenue at one end and cost at the other. But I'm also about the value we create. And so I think about this in terms of the output continuum, which is efficiency at one end and opportunity at the other. How do we do things really, really well at one end? And how do we maximize the gain from that at the other? And so, when we think about cost and efficiency, that isn't going to involve me in looking at where I can strip all cost out of the business. That's
Right.
not my agenda. My number one agenda will be to look at how we build an even stronger root system inside the business.
Correct.
The right costs that build foundation. Cost is not something in my mind that we have to get rid of. Cost is just what we have to invest into the right things to give us foundational strength. On the efficiency side, when it comes to revenue, I'm a marketer, and our reach into the market should be the most measured, efficient system we have in the business. We know we spend a certain amount and we get a certain amount of revenue back, and it's scientific. And I'm going to be looking at what you're already doing, what works, how we're measuring, and how do we make that even better. On the other side, if I think about revenue, this is pretty obvious, and opportunities in front of us, there's gold everywhere. And sometimes it hasn't been able to be optimized. And many of you know that gold is there and you're frustrated that we're not getting it. And that's probably because there also hasn't been, the opportunity to apply the costs to the right priorities. I'm absolutely obsessive about prioritizing the right spend in the right place from an opportunity point of view. So I'm going to be looking at foundational strength, our reach as an organization, the gold that we can create at an opportunity level, and the priorities we need to work under. And if you get that framework, we're going to work just fine. As I say that back to you, if you were doing that delivery to a new organization, how would that work for you?
Yeah, I'm actually blown away to sort of see it. And I have a question for you
Yes.
as someone who sort of does this, lives this, and breathes this, sort of in a broader scale. What would you say is the most important? If you could, opportunity cost, you can do one thing. What do you do first? Like where do you start?
Out of the four quadrants.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not an accounting trained CPA trained person. I am a marketing and sales trained person. So I would gravitate to the top end. I mean I really do believe the success to scale is being able to scale the revenue first. Cost at some point is a zero sum game. Once you've stripped everything out, you're left with nothing. And so, and you need to know that you can go to market. You need to know that there is community there that needs what you do, and there's an ability to get the money to do it.
Yeah.
That's really what reach is. There's a community that needs what we do, and there's an ability to get the money to do it. The money might not come from the people that are the beneficiaries, but there is money there to do it that we can get our hands on. If
Yeah.
once I know that, so for me, that's like a big decision point. Once I know that, then I need to know that we can actually put a message in front of them they'll relate to that allows investment in the bottom half, if you
Right.
like, would be my thinking.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, obviously, you sort of got to do all four,
Of course.
but that was exactly what we did. There was because you can measure the impact of a new donor person or a new grant writer or a new marketing person. That's where we started. We beefed up our marketing team and donor team because we said we know from business practices that if you do A, B is most likely going to happen. You got
Mm.
to maybe test some things. So I love that. I love that's exactly the approach we took. And so thank you. I feel
And,
good about
yeah, and look, happy for you to take that and use it and continue to talk about it with the people in your organizations. One of the things that we've been using visual models now in organizations for a long time, and when you draw people in, and if you can't show people your thinking, they fill in the blanks themselves, right? And so they don't get a complete picture of what you're actually thinking if you don't show it to them. And so framing for people visually is a very powerful internal alignment methodology. But it's just interesting, when we think about a lot of people that come to the entrepreneurial world, they land there because they had something that everybody liked. And then they had this entrepreneurial seizure where they went, I think I could make a company out of this and sell it. But they were never salespeople.
it. Right.
And so they shy away from the front end of the business because I invented this thing and I love that. And then almost delegate the front end of the business to somebody else. And, a good friend of mine, Joe Polish from Genius Network, always says, don't delegate the money, don't delegate the marketing. You need to be in control of your market. You need to be in control of your money. I think that's pretty good advice, quite frankly.
Yeah, I think if you talk about whether the other attributes of a successful entrepreneur, number one or two or three is going to be passion. And if you truly believe in what you're doing, you are going to do you're going to be the salesperson, you're going to be the marketing person, you're going to be the fundraiser or the investor, going out and asking for money. And really with AdCheck, this is something that had never been done before. Imagine putting a 4-color ad on the back of your pay stub back when people got paychecks instead of direct deposit. And the first time we saw it, my partner and I were like, oh my gosh. But we were the most passionate people, going out there and selling
Yeah.
this to Fortune 700 businesses and major advertisers. And here we are, a couple of 30-something kids who didn't know what we were doing really, but we were passionate about what we were trying to build.
Well, we say things all the time that disclose our age, and the idea of a paycheck is now no longer in existence.
Nope, nope, it's all electronic
Yeah,
now.
so no one's seeing a 4-color out on the back of a paycheck anymore. But it
No.
leads us to an interesting conversation about kind of strategic thinking, strategic decision making, and alignment. Right? There's always value. The context is the only thing that changes. So, is there value in the concept of using the pay mechanism that employees have to market to them? That's a valuable concept, no
Yeah.
matter what, right? While there are paychecks, the mechanism is let's put a 4-color ad on the back of a paycheck. But the world changes, and now there's digital electronic payment. Is there a way of doing that same thing, communicating valuable messages to employees attached to their payment?
Yeah, that's exactly the direction we were going on because this is the early 2000s when it was shifting over from paper to electronic. And so we were working with some of the largest employer online, like ADP,
Yeah.
to build a marketplace on their websites.
Right.
So if you got a paycheck or a pay stub or an electronic payment from ADP, you could go to their website and see the same ads, receive the same benefits. Um, but
Interesting.
yeah, so that was sort of the transition there, and ultimately, I don't think we moved quite quick enough, um, but uh, but it was still a fun concept.
Yeah. So if we think about strategy, right? Um, Strategy is context in a business sense. And context is all about, are we still relevant to the environment? A species becomes extinct when it is no longer relevant to the environment. So a company becomes extinct, blockbuster, when it's no longer relevant to the environment, right? So strategy is context and relevance. And you do strategic thinking, firstly to survive, and then secondly to thrive, right? Um, Tactical is the concept. Oh, this is the solution we've created. Now we
Mhm.
need to take that concept to market and sell it. If we elevate to that strategic level and you think about, Rescue Mission Alliance and that world that you live in, so is the value timeless? Of course. Well, people need help with food kitchens and accommodation and the ability to actually clothe themselves at an affordable level. And is there value in the idea of how do we transfer what others no longer use that is in great condition rather than going to landfill, get it used elsewhere? All of those things have value, right? But the context of the world changes over time. Retail has changed enormously.
Sure.
So how do you think through that strategic relevance level question? How often do you do it? Is it every day for you? Do you take your team off site? Is it you that mostly does it? And then you go back to your team and go, got another thought. How does it play out in your world?
Yeah, that's another great question. So starting with at Barna, we use the Patterson StratOp process. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but it's been around for 60 plus years. And we were blessed to have one of the founders as our facilitator. It's an offsite 2 to 3 day. Uh, you know, if you have a plan, and you put your plan to work, the plan will work.
Yeah.
Always we start with the plan. We typically do it every 6 to 12 months. And again, it's an offsite event where you can just fully focus, be relaxed, hopefully in a relaxed atmosphere. And you walk through this process, and you're right. You start day one is all sort of swirling up in the clouds, high level strategic thinking. Where is the company going? Asking all those questions. What are the risks that could make us irrelevant? What is changing in the environment, which is politically constantly changing? But what's not changing is the need to address those of food insecurities. In particular, for us, it's women and women with children coming
Yeah.
out of domestic violence and uh, uh, trafficking situations, as well as the ongoing homeless problem. So we make sure that we're addressing all of those concerns on a constant basis. In our weekly executive meetings, where we go around the table and we talk about our strategic meetings and how are we then taking the tactical components and implementing them in to the business. One of the again, another philosophy is sort of we dream big. You got to have a big vision. Taking RMA to a national or potentially even international brand is sort of the North Star. How do you get there? You got to execute the small things.
Mm.
And so those are your more tactical applications of the day-to-day business components, all driven by a vision or a strategic component that, to answer your question, we talk about daily.
Yeah. But I think again in your answer, you highlighted a clear way of thinking about this for people. The single most important strategic question is, do we deserve to exist?
Mhm.
And the essence of that question is, are we solving a truly meaningful problem? Now, the world might have changed and the way we solve it might change, and how we need to go about it might change, but do we solve a truly meaningful problem? And do we do it with a better use of resources than everybody else? Do we deserve to exist?
Yeah.
Should people give us money because we solve a truly meaningful problem better than anybody else? As long as you can tick that question, the rest then is SWOT analysis, isn't it? It's strategic thinking as a framework. But if you haven't addressed that problem up front, the rest is really just mechanics for mechanics' sake. Then the second question, I think, which you raised is, well, how big do we want to go in solving that truly meaningful problem? Are we going to do it in a state, in a country, globally? So if we solve a truly meaningful problem and we do it better than everybody else, how big do we want to go? Because if we deserve to exist, do we deserve to do what others are doing ahead of them? These are challenging strategic questions. But if you answer them and you're confident that the answer is yes, then what's the SWOT analysis? What are the priorities? What are the political, social, technological, global trends coming down the path? And so on. I'd love to talk about scaling and scale. It's an obsessive conversation in the world today. It probably tags onto the idea of strategic kind of thinking. I think the whole concept of scale has almost got out of hand a little bit. And sometimes it's scale for the sake of scale, when in fact, is that the right thing? Does it make sense? And then sometimes it's absolutely the right thing to do. I'd love to get your take on what scale means. And yeah, I think it's become an obsession that isn't always helpful to a business or a not-for-profit. But I'd love to get your take on scale.
Yeah, I think this is where it is different in a for-profit or nonprofit. Maybe not. Ultimately, what we're addressing is need. So if the need is there, then scaling is a natural component of what we should be doing,
Yeah.
right? And so here in Ventura and Oxnard, we're opening a new women's and children's location that will, it's only 60 beds, but it's going to double the number of beds that are available for longer than 30 days in the state of California for women and women with children. And there's 1,200 homeless women and women with children just in our county. So the need far outweighs the supply currently. So we are looking at, we're also in escrow in a property, a 5-acre property to build, 100 or more beds, additional beds to address the need. So it's not scale for the sake of scaling. And again, we're not for making more profit. It's for meeting the needs that exist in our community, in our state, and unfortunately across the country.
Yeah, that's a fascinating take on it. It creates the question, doesn't it? Why do you want to scale? Do you want to scale for profit or do you want to scale for contribution? And when you go, oh, well, it's 60 beds, and there's 1,200 in need, and someone might go, oh, that's not really a great scale, but it's the level of growth that we can manage in a responsible way, and it's double the number.
Yeah.
It's like that starfish story, right? The fellow's walking down the beach and throwing the starfish back into the water, and somebody comes past. It's a poet wrote about it. So he's walking along the beach and he's throwing these starfish into the water, and somebody comes past and says, "What are you doing?" He said, "Well, they've washed up on the beach and they're going to dry out in the sun." And the person says, "You can't possibly make a difference. There's hundreds of starfish along the beach, and you're not going to get them all back in the water before they dry out." And he picks up a starfish, he throws it back into the water and said, "Well, made a difference to that one."
Yeah,
It's
that's right. That's exactly right. That's right.
It's interesting when you throw the lens of scale. I'm thinking this through because you just raised it in my mind. In the context of scaling the contribution, you would put a very different business lens on a management team's conversation about scale if it always started with how do we scale the contribution, and then let's look at if we can control cost as we do that, create reach. I mean, we're going back to this again. Create reach in an efficient way, uncover the gold in there from an opportunity point of view as we for revenue as we create that scale the contribution, And then what do we need to focus on at a priority level then in that case? It just scale for contribution rather than scale for commerce purely is an interesting conversation.
Yeah, I think again in the just like AdCheck, how do you scale something that's not been done? You have to create a market for it. The market didn't really exist. There was no need per se for AdCheck. So we had to create the demand, by marketing our services to Fortune 500 companies and marketing agencies. Where here and it's a sad statement, right? That we need to grow, we need to scale to meet the demands that we think are just going to get worse and continue to get worse. Um, and again, it's also a little bit different in the for-profit, as you sort of mentioned before. We're not necessarily wanting to say we do things better than, there's 350 rescue missions across the country. They all are invaluable to their communities and services. What we're hoping we can do is provide service to them, making them more efficient, by taking over their administrative costs, managing just like any M&A type of situation. Um, you know, these are 350 organizations that go through an annual audit, that have to run payroll and do HR, and so it's again a force for good. I hope that is my desire, is that we are a force for good, making not just RMA, but other organizations more efficient, more effective in their communities, and by doing good. And it's not a competitive environment. It is hey, we're all in this to feed the homeless, to take care of the orphans and widows.
Business in the for-profit space is easy to perceive as being highly competitive, but actually the most success comes from collaboration and the people that work best together.
Yes.
And you do need to know who else is in your marketplace, but you don't have to destroy them to win, at what you're doing. And some people think that you do. Some people think that to win you have to actually destroy everyone else. That's not what we're saying. And certainly, does the organization deserve to exist? Simply is there's more energy going into making a contribution with the most effective use of resources, and be a leading light on that. But set an example on that for others to follow. I'd love to get your take on the human dimension. We haven't really talked about people in organizations, and I've had lots of conversations with people on the podcast about where AI is going and everything else. I think we can park that for other. I've had
Yeah.
lots of that. But it would be remiss if I didn't unpack your thinking about people and leadership of people in organizations. I'll just lead you into that with that and let you run with it.
Sure. Uh, I am a huge believer. I'm a relational person, and just to cover the partnership, I love partnerships. I think it's a biblical concept that we are better together. That you surround yourself by a council of many. That you're going to be more successful. And a
Mm.
true partnership is where both organizations are equally benefiting. Some, they might not look exactly the same, but both organizations, it's a win-win, if you will. I believe that in human relationships as well. And I consider myself, another biblical principle, as a servant leader. So it is my role to serve my VPs, and it is their role to serve their directors, and ultimately, I really serve the entire organization. So culture is absolutely job one. Um, Creating a culture of servant leadership, and if you really dig into that, what that all means, I am here to make sure everyone has what they need to be successful. I'm not here to demand things be done on my behalf to make me look good. I believe that's a very, very important role uh, in building a strong culture. I've seen it done. I've been parts of it, but through other leaders, building a collaborative, wonderful culture. And I think that's what drives me. And honestly, it's sad sometimes when you walk into certain organizations, and I think nonprofits as well, maybe even more so, where the culture has been not a priority because, hey, we're all here to do
Yeah.
good work. Uh,
Yeah.
so, yeah, that's one of the first things I did was I created a new core values system, and it's like turning a freighter. It takes a long, long time, but I think we've made some headway.
The whole culture question's been pursued for decades now in organizations, and a lot of money's been spent on culture strategies and everything else. I think culture is a feature. The benefit is organizational character.
Mhm.
And so we focus on the feature in sales. If you focus on the feature rather than the benefit, you tend not to make the sale. If we constantly focus on the feature, which is culture, we might miss the benefit, which is character. Does
Yeah,
this organization have character? Can I trust them? And
right.
I wonder if we've overthought it and overcooked it now for a long time. I grew up in really small towns in Western Australia, like 400 people, 900. When I'm saying small towns, small, right? And the local businesses were the pillars of the community. Um, and if they weren't fair employers, no one worked for them, and people didn't buy from them.
Yeah,
And so, if you want to be respected, be respectful. If you want people to create value, value them. If you want to be liked, be likable.
yeah.
It's not wildly difficult. It's not a wildly
It's
difficult set of
it's
concepts.
really not, and you're right. People made a lot of money off of something that should be pretty straightforward.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to kind of wrap up with three more, kind of rapid fire questions, which might not be that rapid fire because I haven't pre warned you about them. But um, I'll do the third one first, actually, because I'll give you a little more time to think about this. But this is the advice question. Imagine you have a young leader who you are actively mentoring, and you want that young leader to just there's this one key bit of wisdom I want you to remember above everything else. What would that piece of wisdom be that you'd want them to remember? What would that?
Yeah, I think it's love what you do. Uh, enjoy it. Have fun doing it.
Yeah.
Don't take life too seriously. Yeah, I would say that's my. There's a lot of, like you said, there's a lot of consultants out there that will tell you this, that, and the other. But if you don't enjoy what you're doing, find something else.
Okay. So the second question might be a bit harder. If you were going to write a book about your approach to, could be leadership, could be business, could be the whole thing, but you're going to write a book that outlines your approach to, well, I guess it is leadership of organizations. What do you think you might call it?
That is a much harder
I know
question.
it's a much harder question.
I started a book a while ago called The Coalition for Common Sense.
Okay.
Sort of when I feel like we've lost common sense, and I think it's very true in business. Sometimes we just can't see what's right in front of our face. So
That's a pretty good book title. I think you should finish that book. It's the
I would
farmers.
love to get a bunch of leaders. Maybe you can do it. Just interview a bunch of leaders about common sense and um,
Yeah, well, my father, who's no longer with us, but he was one of 10 and grew up on a farm. And, you know, he, but he often during my youth would say, Simon, common sense is just not that common.
yep,
So if a car's broken down on the side of the road with a flat tire and they're standing next to it, you have to stop on a country road because clearly they don't know how to change that tire. And it's
yep.
kind of common sense if you just, think it through. But common sense is not that common. So I think that's a great book title. Last quick question. What are you really curious about right now? What's kind of got you lit up in terms of thinking through what does this mean? What do we do about it? What are you most curious about?
Well, as I'm new to the nonprofit world, I'm very curious about generosity. I'm very curious about what um, drives generosity, not for the sake of me wanting to go out and raise more money, but for the sake of just understanding the core components of. We all know it. We've heard it said, right? It's better to give than receive. It's actually true. You feel really good about doing that. So I think right now in my current, I think that probably changes quite often. What I'm very curious about is um, what drives generosity, whether it's volunteerism or actually donating something. Um, there's big generosity, there's little generosity, and everything in between. So I think
Well,
that's what I'm
and
curious about.
what is it, in fact? And
And what is it?
and does
Absolutely.
generosity drive volunteerism, or is it the other way around? That's your second book, by the way, if it hasn't already been written, The Generosity Effect. So,
Hmm.
what an interesting study that would be. Todd, this has been such a joy being able to just kind of riff backwards and forwards with you on a whole bunch of different concepts and build a model for people to use for the 100-day fast framework. If you step into a senior role, it's a high integrity framework. It's not coming from a space of, let's kind of strip and destroy. It's coming from a space from, let's build foundation and then find the gold and prioritize. Lots of really interesting overlays between the for-profit and not-for-profit world, and not-for-profit is just not a good label. Um,
Right.
yeah, but I don't know that you should call it the not-for-tax world. I don't think that.
No, that's just between us.
Yeah, that's and anyone listening to the podcast. So I want to thank you for sharing your decades of leadership and business wisdom, and really, it's Rescue Mission Alliance that the CEO of, one of those organizations that's really out there doing great work that is almost never going to be able to match the volume of demand that the marketplace has. But if we don't have these organizations, we're in much worse shape. And so thank you for your conversation. Thank you for being a great steward of what you're doing with Rescue Mission Alliance. And I look forward to the next time we get to chat.
Well, thanks, Simon. I've really enjoyed this. I wasn't sure, uh, but I've really enjoyed the time together, and I appreciate your wisdom in bringing out subjects and information that maybe wouldn't have come out otherwise. So,
It's always the conversation, right?
yeah,
That gives rise to the interesting insights. Thanks very much, Todd.
thank you.